Okay, so this is the second Q&A about the Come As You Are 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I have a bunch of questions that have been submitted, and then I'm happy to answer additional questions from anyone who is here. Hi, Amy, or who shows up during the time that I am rattling off the answers to the submitted questions. And if you are watching this recording and you have follow-up questions, or if you have a question that you didn't submit or that I didn't answer, please send it to us. However you got this recording, whether you got an email or you saw it on social, etc., just respond with your question, because either I'll do another one of these or I'll just answer your question directly. So the first question is, what specifics are included that could enhance someone who already is a practicing yoga therapist with knowledge about the latest theories about pain science, i.e. multifactorial, biopsychosocial, fascia related to pain, etc.? Okay, this is a 200-hour yoga teacher training. It is intended primarily for people who are yoga practitioners, but who are not yet yoga teachers, or who are yoga teachers that somehow ended up being yoga teachers without a 200-hour training, which I know happens, or yoga teachers who feel like their 200-hour training was a long time ago, or it was really focused on just the poses and wasn't really comprehensive. A yoga therapist, generally speaking, has over 1,000 hours of training, and is trained to work with all kinds of different populations. Now, if you are a yoga therapist who was grandparented into yoga therapy and you feel like there are some basic skills or basic information that you're lacking, then you are totally welcome to join this training, but it is a basic training. It's not a 300-hour, it's a 200-hour basic teacher training. And the purpose of this training, the hole that it fills in the vast number of yoga teacher trainings that exist, is that most yoga teacher trainings are not kind for people who are living with chronic pain and movement challenges. So generally speaking, to complete a 200-hour yoga teacher training, you have to be in a studio for very long days on end. It can be a problem if you have pain and you're expected to do a whole bunch of physical practices, and those practices aren't necessarily adapted. So you're not necessarily taught how to even practice yoga for yourself, let alone to make yoga available to other people who are also experiencing chronic pain conditions. If you have brain fog and you're expected to absorb, 8 to 10 hours of information in a day, 20 hours of information in a weekend, it's overwhelming. What if you're in a flare and you're not available or can't participate or can't fully engage that weekend? You've missed 20 hours of material. What if you can't fly across the country or drive, 5 hours away to be able to go to a yoga teacher training? Usually they're held on the weekends, or they're at a retreat center where you're expected to go for a whole month and train every day, and that's not necessarily accessible. So what this offers is an inclusive approach to a 200-hour teacher training. It's over the course of a whole year, and it meets for just 4 hours a week, every Sunday, with a couple of breaks. And it's entirely online. And you are encouraged to come exactly as you are. So whatever that means, however if everything that you're doing that day is going to be in a chair, awesome. If you need to be laying down on the floor, awesome. If you're in bed, absolutely fine. If you are struggling to absorb the material because your mind's just not in it, come anyway, and everything's going to get recorded. So you can always go back and review the material when you feel like you can be present, more present physically, more present cognitively, etc. I'm not going to discourage people from participating who want to, but I want you to understand who the primary audience is, that this is a basic training. Now, I do continuing education trainings that are for professional yoga instructors and yoga therapists. The level 1, 2, and 3 yoga for arthritis programs add up to 100 hours of continuing education programming. Those are for yoga teachers and yoga therapists who already are trained, who already are experienced, who already have a strong foundation to build from. Both of those qualify for continuing education credit with both Yoga Alliance and IOYT. They qualify for continuing education with IOYT because they're taught at a level that's appropriate for either a yoga teacher or a yoga therapist. This training, which is a 200-hour training, is not intended for yoga therapists. It does count as a 200-hour. It also counts as continuing education for yoga teachers with Yoga Alliance, but not for yoga therapists with IOYT. So hopefully I answered that question adequately. All right, the next note that I have here, is just a note from Posey to make it clear that there is currently early bird special pricing on the training, and it ends on December 1st. And there's something here that sort of lays this out in more detail. And because I see it here, I think probably she wants me to mention this. All right, so if you are getting your 200-hour training, if you have not completed a 200-hour training before, the full price for the training is $3,000. The early bird price is $2,750. That's spread out across the entire year. So I think it's $250 a month. However, if you already have a 200-hour training, you can audit. Okay, so you can do this as a second 200-hour training, a refresher 200-hour training, and the cost is reduced. And there are 2 audit options. One audit option is if you still want continuing education credit and you still want a certificate for completion, which means I'm going to evaluate your progress with the material and your competency across the outcomes for the training. And so that looks like it's $1,600 early bird over the full. So you have to divide that by 12 to see what it is per month. If you just want to come whenever you want to come and you don't care about continuing education, you don't care about CEU, getting a certificate, you just want access to the material, you want to be able to sometimes show up and sometimes just watch the recordings, then it's $1,375 because it's less work for us if we're not evaluating any of your work. And then if you have already done the yoga for arthritis trainings, any of them, so if you've done level 1, for example, yoga for arthritis training, you've already gotten some of this material. And so the price to audit, if you've done a yoga for arthritis training, is $1,100. So that's like less than $100 a month. That's a pretty good deal. That's the early bird option. I know that's like a lot of different prices. So there's the main cost for people who have never done a 200-hour. There's the first audit option for people who want the CEUs and the certificate and are expected to come. I think you're expected to come 80% of the time to the live sessions. There's the come whenever you feel like it audit option. And then there's the I've already done a yoga for arthritis training option. And all of this information is available when you go to the registration page. So the prices for the training from the lowest to the highest are between $100 a month and $250 a month. Okay. And then all of that increases once we get to December 1st. I'm not going to go through what all of the increased prices are, but that just gives you a basic idea of what those tracks are. All right. Next question is, okay, so this is 4 questions in one. So why this training and what will be covered? Okay, I think I already said that. This is a 200-hour training, which means you will be learning all of the basics that you need to know to be a yoga teacher. And Yoga Alliance specifies how many hours need to be spent in a variety of different categories. So I think you have like 30 hours of anatomy and physiology. You have a bunch of hours that are about how to actually teach the practices. You have the humanities, which is where the philosophy lives. You have the practices part. So like, how do you, what's the pedagogy for how to teach, and what are the business models that you should consider? So like the nuts and bolts kind of stuff, how to market, the ethics, the scope of practice, all of that. So we go above and beyond because there are certain things that I think are important that are not necessarily standard in a 200 hours. So you get everything that you are required to get, but we're also bringing in yoga and social justice. We're bringing in a panel on race and religion in yoga so that you can have a better understanding of the implications of that when you're working with a variety of different populations and making this work accessible in that regard. You are going to specifically get content about chronic pain and the role of yoga in the management of chronic pain. And you're going to get more evidence than other trainings would, because that's who I am. Those of you who don't know, I am a yoga researcher. And so you're going to get a little more of the research evidence about how yoga is beneficial for health. And all of the training is intended with inclusiveness in mind. And so when you're taught, let's say Tadasana, mountain pose, you're going to be taught like 4 different versions of mountain pose, because we want you to be able to find what is mountain pose for me in my body today and on other days. And then when I'm teaching Tadasana, what does it look like to teach Tadasana inclusively? So that leaving this training, you should feel confident being able to offer a basic yoga practice to anybody who comes in with any level of physical mobility or range of motion. So that's the first question of why this training and what will be covered. The next one is, how will our YFA training differ from this 200-hour YTT? So it's a big difference. The Yoga for Arthritis trainings, levels 1, 2, and 3, the purpose is to learn how to teach or provide yoga therapy to people who live with arthritis and chronic pain. The yoga is getting delivered to people with arthritis and chronic pain. This 200-hour is for people who are living with arthritis and chronic pain. The people who are teaching the yoga have arthritis and chronic pain. Now, if I'm somebody who lives with chronic pain, I also may very well want to be teaching people who have chronic pain. So there's an overlap there. And frankly, in our Yoga for Arthritis continuing education programs, half of the people who come to those trainings have arthritis themselves. So we recognize that the people who are doing this work are people who are living this work. But some of them really struggled through their 200-hour training before getting to the Yoga for Arthritis continuing education programs. So the purpose of this is to make a basic 200-hour yoga teacher training available to people who may otherwise believe it to be unattainable. But as I said, you are welcome to take it as an audit, as a refresher, if you're already a yoga teacher. And it looks like it's less than $100 a month if you've already completed a Yoga for Arthritis training with us. What resources will be used? A lot. So we have a reading list, we have a required reading list, and then we have a recommended reading list. Our faculty, many of our faculty have published books. And so we're going to recommend Jivana's book because he's teaching the social justice component of the course. We're going to recommend Marlisa's book because she's teaching the philosophy. We're going to recommend my book because I'm teaching the arthritis and chronic pain content. We're using Anne Swanson's Science of Yoga book. And we're not going to expect you to read all of those books in totality, but we're going to ask you to read sections of them that are relevant to the course material that we're going to offer. And then I'm going to be holding a journal club periodically throughout the course. So I'm going to ask you to give it your best college try at reading a research article, whatever you get from it, you get from it. But then when we have journal club, we'll really unpack it and talk about, well, what does this actually mean? If we're going to say yoga grows gray matter in the brain, you know, how do I talk about that? How do I make sense of it in common language? How do I make sure that I understand it myself? Not that we're going to read that article in particular, but just, yeah, I will be asking you to give a try to reading some actual research papers as well. Okay. And then there will also be some pre-recorded material that's available to you in addition to that. Anne Swanson has a bunch of great videos, for example. She used to be a documentarian, if I'm saying that correctly. And so her recorded stuff is really beautiful, and we want to make that available too. All right, start and end dates. Okay, so this is over the course of an entire year. It meets on Sundays. I think it's Sunday afternoon Eastern time. And the information is in the registration page. I should know that for sure off the top of my head. But I wanted to make it like before church, after dinner. For the East Coast, at least. I know, I mean, we have people all over the world who want to attend this training, and it's absolutely impossible to make it work for every time zone, because we have people from like the Pacific coast of the US to Australia, and then, you know, in between Europe, etc. And so that's like complete opposite. So we're doing the best we can, and we recognize it's like, I think it's a very early morning in Australia. So yeah, and then I think it's probably late evening in Europe. And so, you know, everything gets recorded. If you audit, then you just come whenever you want to come, and it's fine. But if you're doing this as your 200 hour, then you really should be there live as much as possible. So if that's a concern, let me know. So starting and ending dates, it's starting mid-January, it's ending mid-December. Yeah, and it meets 4 hours a time, 4 hours at a time on Sundays. And there are a few reasons that we did that. One is that if you miss a week because you're feeling lousy or because you have a scheduled surgery, we don't want you to miss 20 hours of content out of 200 hours of training. We also don't want you to go a whole lot of time in between, because if we meet once a month for 20 hours at a time, you go a whole month without even thinking about it. And it's easy to lose that material when it's not top of mind. So we are hoping that 4 hours at a time is digestible, and it's a touch point every week where you're coming back and building slowly on the material, so it doesn't feel overwhelming and you don't feel like you're getting behind. But we stretched it out so that it's really a journey, because becoming a yoga teacher, honestly, 200 hours is not enough training to become a yoga teacher. But we wanted to lay out that 200 hours in a way that you're going to be able to really absorb it and start applying it in your own practice and in life. Okay, that is that. I'm going to mark that as complete. Hi, Dr.Steffany. I would like to explore my next steps beyond level 1 that I completed in 2019. I'm teaching during your info session on November 16th and would love the recording for viewing afterwards. I still have 2 integral yoga therapy modules to complete, but wanted to put some serious thought about my expertise as I head toward practicum next year. Thanks for working with us for the integrations last summer. It was a highlight of my yoga career. Oh, okay. So to the person who asked this question, if you are in a yoga therapy training, this is going to be basic. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you're in a yoga therapy training, because it's not like your skills are stale or it's been a long time. So if you did your yoga training 20 years ago and you feel like a lot of it is not at the tip of your fingers anymore, then this could totally make sense. But if you're in a yoga therapy training right now, you are living in the material, it does not make sense to me that you would do a 200-hour basic yoga teacher training. So for this person who said she did the level 1 training, what I would actually recommend is that you do the level 2 training and the level 3 training. And actually, if you are in the integral yoga therapy program, levels 1, 2, and 3 of the Yoga for Arthritis series count as an elective course for you to be an integral yoga therapist. So if you've already done the level 1, you get credit for that. And you can also do level 2, which is a practicum overlapping with your yoga therapy practicum. You can double dip. So any hours that you're teaching people with arthritis and chronic pain, you can count toward your level 2 yoga for arthritis training. You can also count them toward your integral yoga practicum. And so for that person, you know who you are. If you want to specialize in this area, talk to me, because I'm actually forming a group. I'm going to do the integral yoga yoga therapy practicum as a small group, like a if you think about a seminar for graduate school where we're all going to meet together and discuss cases. So if you want to get involved with that, let me know. And then the level 3 training, once you've done level 2, so level 2 yoga for arthritis training, you work one-on-one with a mentor and you go through it at your own pace. The level 3 training is happening in March. So if you want to be in the level 3 training that's happening in March, you have to get your level 2 done by March. And some people do that really quickly, and some people it takes a few months. So if that's something that you want to do, if you want to move through the levels and complete your yoga for arthritis certification, I would suggest enrolling for level 2 sooner rather than later, either through integral yoga therapy if you're in that program already, or independently, so that you can participate in March. I don't do level 3 very often. So you might have to wait at least a year, if not more, to catch it again if you miss it in March. So just FYI. All right, next. I'm looking at audit options since I'm not sure I want to do YFA level 2 right now with what's on my plate for 2023. I'm intrigued at the refresher option this program entails. What's required in the audit level with certificate? Does the evaluation mean submitting a recording like in the YFA self-paced, or just 80% attendance, or both? Great question. Okay, so you have to attend 80% of the sessions live, and you don't have to pre-record anything, but you will have to teach your fellow students. So it's not like a lot of 200-hour trainings. You do the whole training, and then at the very end, you teach an hour-long class. We are not doing it that way because, one, we think that's not enough practice at teaching. And two, especially when you're working with people who have chronic pain, you're not always going to be teaching for an hour straight. So as we move through the material, we'll put you in breakout rooms and we'll say, okay, we're going to send you into a breakout room. We want you to take turns teaching your fellow classmates how to do tree pose, and then come back and let's talk about how it went. And then maybe we ask you to go into a breakout and teach sun salutation to each other. We will eventually ask you to teach the whole class, probably for half an hour, because, and when you go into breakout rooms, we're going to visit those breakout rooms and we're going to give you feedback. So we're not just leaving you on your own, but you're going to gradually build the skills of how do I deliver this material. We care a lot about language and the verbal instruction that's provided. And also the way how it's made accessible and inclusive, and whether it's clear, and whether the language is non-hierarchical, so nothing is better or worse than anything else. And those of you who've done the Yoga for Arthritis trainings know all of this, but we want to help you build those skills gradually and practice them as you go. So yes, technically there will be like a formal sign off that we say, yes, this person is a competent teacher. Honestly, I think when you finish your 200-hour for the first time, you're like barely competent. And so we want to raise the bar and have you be more competent. If you're an experienced teacher, then it's just going to be great practice, and you're probably going to get a lot out of sharing your expertise with some of the other students. So yeah, really, if you just show up 80% of the time, you're going to get what you need to get out of it in order to fulfill the expectations for the course. Okay, I think I answered that question. As a newbie, can you clarify if this training is one that certifies you to be a teacher and or a supplementary offering? I noted the CEU language and clarification and price differences, but wasn't sure the implications of choosing a specific option. Okay, so to reiterate, if you are not a yoga teacher yet, you have to do, it's still at an early bird, but you have to do the highest price option because you are going to get the most guidance and oversight. And so to become a yoga teacher, a 200-hour basic yoga teacher, you will go through this training. You will get all of the guidance you need, all of the skills you need to be a competent yoga teacher. If you are already a yoga teacher, you're not going to need as much support and guidance or oversight. And so that's where we have the audit levels. If you audit, you are not going to get registered as a 200-hour yoga teacher. So that's absolutely essential that you choose the right one. Now, if you're not a yoga teacher yet and you want to audit and you just want to be a fly on the wall, I don't know why you would do that when it's not going to make you a yoga teacher in the end. You're welcome to do that, but you're not going to get what you need to become a yoga teacher. But that is the main purpose of this, is to help people become yoga teachers who need an accessible option. And everybody else who wants to do it is welcome. But that's the main purpose. So now I feel like I'm answering the same question over and over again. So I'm going to mark that one as complete. All right, Amy, you have been so incredibly patient as I like blabbered on, repeating myself over and over again in response to these questions. So now that I have said all of that, do you have additional questions, or did I provide you with all of the information you were looking for?
I think you provided me all the information I was looking for. You are very thorough and very clear. Okay. I just have to decide what I want to do. That's the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've done level 1?
No, I have not.
Oh, you haven't? But
no, I thought about it, but I didn't because I was intimidated with the classes. Okay. The physicality of the classes, not getting through the content, but like just at the time, I wasn't going to be able to get through the schedule that they had physically. Got it.
Okay, yeah. But you're a yoga teacher already.
No, I'm not.
You're not a yoga teacher?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you should do this. You would be great at it.
My question is, do I want to be a teacher or do I audit? Like, I want to learn. There's no doubt, because I'm a lifelong learner. I soak it up.
Let me tell you something, Amy.
Yes.
There are lots of people who say, I'm going to do a yoga teacher training just for me, just for my own personal growth. I know you're somebody who practices yoga, and you might think, oh, well, I'm just going to do it for me. That's what I said when I did my yoga teacher training. And my entire life, like my entire career, is yoga. And so if so many people say that, I mean, I hear it constantly when people introduce themselves. Oh yeah, I started doing yoga and I took the yoga teacher training just because I wanted to learn more. So if you're just going to do it for you, why not get the paper that says that you can teach it, just in case because otherwise at any point in the future, let's say 10 years from now, a bunch of your friends, there's a thing happening at the Y, you want to do it, and you're not going to go through a whole new 200-hour because you didn't pick the right option when you registered. It's silly. That's my opinion.
Oh no, I appreciate that. That's really helpful, because I was like debating. It's, well, I'm also like, I'm going to retire at some point, not quite, and then I'm like, I'm going to need stuff to do. So who knows?
Yeah. And now there's so much happening online. You can even teach it online.
Yeah. I got so excited when I read your book. That was the first thing I said, is that I need to learn how to do this to help other people like me. But I just wasn't at a point in my life where I could do that. But I was just really inspired by that. So,
and that's, when we hold the continuing education trainings, that's what a lot of people, because I said more than half of the people who come to them have arthritis, and many of them say, I started practicing yoga because it helped me with my pain and my fatigue and everything else. And I wanted to be able to help other people, or they were already practicing yoga and then they got arthritis and then they couldn't do it like they used to. And they want to learn, well, and especially people who are getting older, all of my friends are getting arthritis now. I want to be able to be helpful. And so I want to understand how to deliver it to people like me. So, yeah. Well, I hope that this has been useful. And if you have more questions as you deliberate, just let me know.
Definitely will. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's so great to see you.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.